Welcome to the Deep Dive.
Glad to be here.
So today we're digging into a career that's, well, it's less a straight line and more like a strategic takeover across different media, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely. A takeover is a good word for it. When you look at the source materials, we've got the bio, the career steps, her statements. It paints a picture of someone who's much more than just a performer.
Right. We're really aiming to unpack this fascinating mix, sometimes controversial, even between her comedy, acting, the academic side, and that really strong social commentary that, well, provides Amanda Seale's public persona.
That synergy, yeah, that's really the key thing because the list of what she actually does it's kind of dizzying. You've got actress, comedian, poet, media personality, activist, podcaster, and author.
It's a lot.
It is. And it feels like a career built on being that multi-hyphenate, but, and this seems crucial, using success in one area to maybe fund or fuel the more intellectual work somewhere else.
Interesting angle.
Born Amanda Ingrid Seals, Inglewood, California, back in '81. And she even had earlier stage names, right? Amanda Diva, Mendacious D.
Yeah, I saw that. Amanda Diva rings a bell for sure.
It signals that early comfort with sort of reinventing or shaping her identity, I think.
And the mainstream success, you just can't ignore it.
Yeah.
We're talking about someone who starred for 5 years, 2017 to 2021, on HBO's Insecure, Tiffany DuBois.
A huge show. Critically acclaimed, put her right in the cultural conversation.
Definitely. And then you add her HBO stand-up special from 2019, I Be Knowin'. That wasn't just dipping a toe in.
No, not at all. It shows she can operate at that premium cable level in stand-up, plus she did hosting on basic cable publishing. She's really covered the bases.
So the big takeaway for you, the listener, isn't just about someone who's versatile. It's maybe. Maybe her success isn't built on waiting for the right opportunity.
Exactly. It seems more rooted in production, in creating her own platform. Like she didn't wait for the perfect role or the perfect show. She built it.
With things like her game show, the podcast.
Precisely. Smart, funny, and black, small doses. Those feel like the spaces where her real mission, that cultural critique, really happens. The mainstream stuff, maybe it's more like a launch pad.
A strategic launch pad to fund and give visibility to the independent work.
That's how it looks. Where she can maintain that, intellectual rigor she seems to value so much.
That's a really powerful way to frame it. It suggests every move is kind of geared towards carving out that unrestricted space for her voice.
Seems that way.
But to really get that independent voice, we need to look at the foundations. And honestly, the academic side is pretty surprising.
It really is.
So her foundation isn't just performance. It seems anchored in some serious academic work and these really deep cultural roots.
Right. Born in Inglewood, like you said, but then moved to Orlando, Florida in '89. Went to Dr. Phillips High School there.
Okay.
But the cultural frame is wider than just the U.S. The sources mention she holds dual citizenship, U.S. and Grenada.
Ah, okay. How does that connect?
Well, her mother was born and raised in Mount Moritz, Grenada, so that gives her this different lens, right? A more global perspective, maybe. And her father's described as Black American from Roxbury, Boston.
So that dual heritage, U.S. and Grenadian, potentially feeds into a wider view of the African diaspora, which makes sense given her later work.
Absolutely. It becomes highly relevant, I think, when you look at her activism and the themes in her work.
But the part that really stands out, especially for someone known for comedy and acting, is the academic achievement. She got her BA from SUNY-Purchase, solid school.
Yep.
But then she went on to do post-grad work at, well, a top-tier institution.
Columbia University. She earned a master's degree in MA, and not just in anything.
Right. This is a key detail. It was in African-American studies.
Specifically with a concentration in hip-hop.
Wow. Okay, let's pause there. An MA from Columbia, focused on hip-hop. How does that actually inform her work? Is it just a line on the resume, or is it more fundamental?
Oh, I think it's absolutely fundamental. It's the engine. Getting an MA like that means you're deep into critical race theory, cultural sociology, the whole intersectional history of identity in America.
Stuff most comedians aren't necessarily required to know.
Exactly. So when she's building a joke or designing her game show, she's not just winging it based on vibes. She's likely drawing on historical context, academic frameworks she studied. The comedy often feels like cultural critique wrapped up as entertainment.
And you see that perfectly in Smart, Funny, and Black, right? That show is practically her master's thesis brought to life on stage.
Precisely. It celebrates Black history, pop culture, it's edutainment, but grounded in real knowledge. It shows she sees the culture not just as joke fodder, but as a subject for serious study,
It's taking complex ideas, the kind you'd hash out in a seminar room at Columbia.
and making them accessible, fun, even competitive. That commitment to grounding her commentary and actual analysis gives her a kind of weight and authority that maybe some purely performance-trained comics don't quite have.
It lets her switch modes, too, from being light, like a VJ, to being really serious, like an activist.
Yeah, that flexibility is key, and it links perfectly into how her career actually unfolded, starting with acting and then moving into that Amanda Diva persona.
Okay, so we've got the academic engine established. Now let's track the path. She starts out pretty young, actually. A small role in Cop and a Half back in 1993.
Yeah, just a minor part. Then a more significant role in '94 on that Nickelodeon sitcom, My Brother and Me. She played Dionne Wilburn.
So standard child actor beginnings, really. Scripted stuff on kids' TV.
But the shift seems to happen relatively quickly, moving away from just reciting lines towards something more self-authored.
Like spoken word poetry. Her appearance on Russell Simmons' Deaf Poetry Jam in 2002. That's a different skill set entirely.
Totally different. That requires writing your own material, putting yourself out there raw, a big leap from Nick sitcoms.
And that poetic, self-directed voice kind of solidifies into the Amanda Diva persona.
Yes. That's when she becomes more widely known, especially as VJ Amanda Diva on MTV2's Sucker Free Countdown.
Which back then, being an MTV VJ, especially on a show focused on hip-hop and R&B, that was a position of cultural influence.
Huge influence. You were seen as a curator and authority. And importantly, she was commentating on the very culture she was formally studying at Columbia. The two tracks were running in parallel.
That authority must have helped pave the way for her own music career, which, like you said, sometimes gets a bit overlooked now.
Yeah, it shouldn't be. It was pretty substantial. She even stepped in for Natalie Stewart of Floetry on tour with Marsha Ambrosius in 2007. That's not small time.
No, that's integrating into the professional scene.
And she was releasing her own music, too. EPs like Life Experience in '07, Spandex, Rhymes and Soul in '09, Madame Monochrome in 2011. You can see the thematic development even in the titles.
Plus mixtapes. Foreplay in '08, Technicolor Lover in 2012. She was consistently creating across different formats.
Definitely. But maybe the biggest cosign within the music world at that time was her feature on Q-Tip's album, The Renaissance.
Oh, wow. Okay, that album was Grammy nominated.
Exactly. She's on the track Man, Woman, Boogie. That's not some obscure indie project. It's a major, critically lauded album. It really cemented her status not just as a commentator, but as an artist respected within the hip-hop community she was analyzing.
So that whole Amanda Diva period, the VJing, the music, it's essential. It shows her mastering being an insider, a critic, and a creator, all before the big acting break with Insecure.
Absolutely. That blend of authority and performance is kind of the DNA for everything that comes later. She honed that ability to deliver sharp, rhythmic, cultural commentary.
Which transitions perfectly into the next phase, where she hits peak television visibility.
Right, where all those pieces, the acting chops, the VJ swagger, the academic brain, really converge on mainstream platforms.
And that peak visibility era definitely kicks off with Insecure. Playing Tiffany Dubois from 2016 to 2021, the show was huge. But the character, Tiffany, was interesting. Often the polished, maybe more status-conscious one.
Sometimes judgmental, yeah, which created this fascinating contrast with Seal's own emerging public persona as this outspoken activist.
That's a great point. The on-screen character versus the off-screen reality.
And the visibility from Insecure basically allowed her to launch the next phase, stand-up and hosting almost simultaneously. She hosted that true TV show Greatest Ever around 2016-17.
And then the big one, her HBO stand-up special, I Be Knowing, in 2019. That really felt like her defining comedic statement.
Very much so. It had that academic sharpness, using her perspective on race, culture, relationships to fuel the humor. Very distinct.
She also proved she could anchor major network TV, hosting NBC's Bring the Funny in 2019, sharing the stage with big names like Kenan Thompson, Chrissy Teigen, Jeff Foxworthy.
Right, holding her own in that format, and then hosting the BET Awards in 2020. That really cemented her as a top-tier media personality, comfortable in those high-pressure live settings.
But maybe the most telling chapter, the one that gives us the clearest window into her philosophy, is her time on The Real.
Yes, the daytime talk show. She was a frequent guest host in 2019, then got the prominent co-host gig starting January 2020. Huge platform, daily national exposure.
And then she was gone, just 6 months later. That departure feels pivotal. Why did she say she left? What was the core reason?
She was pretty direct about it. She cited essentially the constraints of the format, feeling like she couldn't speak openly and honestly about urgent social issues the way she wanted to.
Without compromise.
Exactly. And the quote the sources mentioned is powerful. She said, "Leaving felt like a betrayal to my people." That frames it not just as a career choice, but as a kind of political or ethical stand.
To stand against the necessary compromises of mainstream daytime TV.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
It suggests a fundamental mismatch between her voice and what that specific platform allowed.
And it didn't end there, did it? There was friction over creative control even after she left.
Right. That intellectual property dispute. In September 2020, she publicly accused The Real of essentially copying elements from her own show, Smart, Funny, and Black.
Specifically, a segment they did called Black Lives Matter University.
Yeah, she claimed its logo looked way too similar to the Smart, Funny, and Black emblem. Which is fascinating because it wasn't just about feeling creatively stifled, it was about defending her own IP.
IP, that's a direct product of her academic work and her independent vision. It's like she was saying, you can't just take this cultural analysis I built.
Precisely. The stakes became about who owns the framework for discussing these cultural issues. And that whole experience seems to have solidified her focus on platforms she controls completely.
Which brings us neatly to those self-generated platforms, the ones she built and owns. Let's talk about Small Doses first.
Okay, Small Doses. It started as a weekly podcast, then she published the book in 2019, Small Doses, Potent Truths for Everyday Youth.
And the style is described as self-help from the hip. What does that actually mean in practice?
I think self-help from the hip is that blend. Again, the academic analysis meets her comedic, no-nonsense delivery. She tackles complex issues, personal or societal, but breaks them down into these sharp, memorable takeaways, the doses.
So applying that critical thinking engine to everyday life stuff.
Yeah, but making it relatable. Avoiding jargon, keeping it direct. It's like street smart, emotional intelligence, but informed by a deeper critical perspective, helping people navigate things, but with her specific brand of potent truth.
And then there's Smart, Funny, and Black.
Yeah.
Which arguably is the most direct manifestation of that master's degree we talked about.
Absolutely. It's a touring variety game show, now also on SiriusXM Radio, and its mission seems crystal clear.
Which is?
To create, as she puts it, a safe space for the Black voice. It's about celebrating and educating on African-American contributions to history, pop culture, everything, all through the format of a game show.
And expanding it to radio in 2022 shows the brand has legs.
Definitely. It's this dynamic, multi-platform ecosystem where she dictates the terms. The education, the comedy, the whole vibe. It feels like the direct answer to the limitations she encountered on shows like The Real.
The pattern seems clear. Leverage mainstream platforms for reach, but build your power base on self-owned IP where your voice isn't diluted.
That seems to be the playbook.
Which is crucial, given how central the activist role is to her identity now. And that role has definitely led to some controversy. Okay, let's shift gears to that activist commentator role. It really feels like the defining aspect of her public identity now, maybe the most controversial too. And this has led her into some really high-stakes situations. We need to be careful here, stick to what the sources say, report impartially.
Absolutely. Impartial reporting is key. She uses her platform to push causes and critique systems, but that urgency has sometimes resulted in statements or actions that drew significant pushback or were later questioned.
Let's start with that incident involving Myron Rolle back in 2019. The sources say she repeated accusations of sexual harassment against him. What did they say about Rolle's side?
The sources state that Rolle, the former NFL player turned neurosurgery resident, strongly denied the claims. He apparently stated he hadn't returned advances or wanted a relationship. Importantly, the sources noted the potential career damage for him, given his specialized field.
Right, the stakes were high.
Very. And the sources also specifically point out that Seals never issued a public apology or retraction regarding her role in amplifying those claims. It really highlights the responsibility that comes with having that kind of platform.
Definitely shows the weight of using your voice in that way. Now, on a different issue, the Rodney Reed case in Texas. She initially supported him.
Yes, she was quite vocal during the campaign for clemency, which got a lot of attention. But then later, she publicly rescinded her support.
Why the change?
She cited further information surfaced about his case. So this instance shows perhaps a willingness to reassess based on new facts, even if it meant backtracking on a public stance.
Interesting. Then in 2020, while still on The Real, she defended Jussie Smollett after his arrest. That must have been tough internally.
Highly polarizing, for sure. Smollett was eventually convicted of filing false police reports, but Seals, at the time on the show, called the alleged hoax low-key noble.
Noble, in what sense?
As a way to raise awareness about hate crimes was the argument. It prioritized the potential social message over the facts emerging from the police investigation. It really underscores that tension between activism and the kind of objectivity expected, maybe rightly or wrongly, from a daytime talk show host.
You can see why she might have felt constrained in that format.
Exactly. Another point of friction mentioned was related to her acting role itself. In 2021, members of Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority objected to her insecure character, Tiffany, wearing their insignia.
Ah, the classic art versus reality conflict.
Pretty much. They felt the character didn't align with the sorority's values. Seal's defense, noted in the sources, was basically, I'm playing a character in a fictional story, not personally representing the organization.
But for some viewers, that line blurs, right? Especially when the actor is also a known activist.
It demonstrates the complex expectations. People project the actor's real-life views onto the character and vice versa.
Okay, but perhaps the most significant and potentially costly activist stance recently has been her support for Palestine during the Gaza war. That's a topic many in the industry have avoided.
Hugely significant, and the sources confirm it's had real consequences for her. She herself noted losing industry relationships because of her position.
And it wasn't just commentary, right? She took a concrete step.
Yes. In September 2025, she signed an open pledge with film workers for Palestine.
What did that pledge involve?
It committed signatories, including her, not to work with Israeli film institutions that are described in the pledge as implicated in genocide and apartheid against the Palestinian people.
Wow. So that moves beyond just speaking out. That's setting a professional boundary.
It absolutely is. It potentially limits her future work opportunities based on her political stance. It really underlines that, for her, activism isn't just an add-on to her career. It's fundamental, even if it comes at a professional cost.
Looking across these examples, Roll, Reed, Smollett, a.k.a. Palestine, the pattern isn't about seeking popularity, is it?
Not at all. It confirms her activism seems rooted in deeply held convictions she expresses, regardless of the blowback. Her willingness to engage in these tough debates, and, as she noted, pay a price like losing relationships, that really defines her career structure now, especially post The Real. She controls her narrative, but that control clearly involves sacrifice.
And that focus on controlling the narrative seems to extend into the personal details she chooses to share as well.
Yeah, and much of that seems to have come out in specific chosen venues, like that interview she did on the Club Shay podcast. That format allows for long, unfiltered conversations, which fits her style perfectly.
And during that chat, she confirmed dating some well-known rappers from her past, Pusha T and Lupe Fiasco.
Right. And she didn't just name drop, she used it in a very Amanda Seales way.
Yeah.
She framed the quality of the rappers she dated as proof of her own high quality.
Tying her personal history directly to her brand of self-worth and demanding respect.
Exactly. It's a self-affirming move.
The Lupe Fiasco connection had some fan speculation around it too, didn't it?
Yeah, for years fans pointed to the outro of his first album, Food and Liquor, where there's a shout-out to Amanda Diva. Her confirming they dated obviously lends a lot of weight to that theory, reinforcing her deep roots in the hip-hop scene from way back.
Okay, the other big personal revelation from that Club Shay interview was about her health and identity.
Right. She described herself as autistic during the conversation.
But there was an important clarification she made immediately after, wasn't there?
Crucial clarification. She stated she's self-diagnosed and hasn't received a formal diagnosis from a licensed medical professional.
That distinction feels really important, especially for someone whose brand is built on analysis and potent truths. How does revealing a self-diagnosis fit with, say, the small doses philosophy?
It actually fits perfectly, I think. It's another example of her taking control of her own narrative, her own definition. The small doses brand is about self-awareness, right? Offering potent truths for everyday use.
Okay.
So sharing her self-diagnosis while being clear about the lack of formal medical confirmation aligns with that self-help from the hip idea. She's offering her own journey, her own understanding of herself, as maybe a reference point for others exploring their own identities. It's a truth she's sharing on her terms.
It reinforces that core theme.
Yeah.
She dictates the terms of her narrative, whether it's about comedy, politics, or personal identity. Transparency as form of power.
Yeah, or maybe weaponized transparency, demanding that people meet her where she is on her terms.
Okay, so let's try and wrap this all together. We've traced this arc from child actor Through that surprising academic detour, the MA in hip-hop studies feels like the bedrock.
The immovable foundation, yeah.
Then becoming a VJ, a musician, an actress, and ultimately a creator of her own intellectual property. Yeah. Smart, funny, and black, small doses.
And the constant thread, the thing you can't escape, is that synthesis, often a difficult one between her art, that sharp academic analysis, and her very upfront activism. Her career really shows someone who gets the value of mainstream visibility but just refuses to dilute her core message to keep corporate access indefinitely.
That departure from the real really feels like the defining moment there.
It's the ultimate proof point of that commitment, I think.
And what's so interesting is that the very thing that makes her appealing to her audience, that sharp, analytical edge honed at Columbia and stand-up, is also the thing that seems to cause the most friction with institutions.
Which raises a really big question, not just for her, but for any creator like her today. When your whole career is built on self-expression, on cultural analysis like the smart, funny, and black model, and you've explicitly rejected mainstream limits over censorship, what happens? How do you sustain that when you bump up against the financial and structural realities of big media?
It feels like the answer, for her at least, lies in those platforms she owns outright. The touring show, the podcast, the radio show. Those seem to be the only places where she can achieve that truly unrestricted voice.
The voice of the activist, comedian, academic she's built herself into, it seems like those independent platforms are where the real power and freedom reside for her.
It's a fascinating case study in strategic independence, really. Use the system to build a name, but build your ultimate base outside its direct control.
A model we might see more of, especially for commentators who prioritize voiceover access.
Definitely something to think about. So if you listening want to really experience that blend of comedy, history, and sharp analysis, and see how that MA translates into something genuinely entertaining and thought-provoking, we definitely suggest checking out Smart, Funny, and Black, either the show or the radio version, or diving into the Small Doses book or podcast for that self-help from the hip.
Yeah, great places to start.
Well, thank you for joining us for this deep dive into a truly complex and fiercely independent career.